Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations Part 1, the Sun. In Vedic astrology, each planet doesn't just rule over specific areas of life. It also symbolizes a particular phase of the human journey. This is about how the energy of a Graha reflects stages like childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age. These symbolic life stage associations help us understand not only what a planet does, but when its nature expresses most fully in our inner development. Let's begin with the Sun, the blazing core of the self, the king of the planetary cabinet. The Sun is symbolically associated with adulthood, or what we'd call the phase of individualization and self-assertion. Think about what happens in adulthood. We leave the shelter of family, step into the world, and begin asking deep questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? How do I shine in this world? These are the very questions the Sun rules. In a chart, the Sun reflects identity, ego, direction, confidence, and dharma, the inner fire that pushes us to stand tall and walk our unique path. When we say the Sun represents adulthood, we're talking about the psychological and karmic moment when a person takes command of their life. It's less about physical age and more about the emergence of the self as a stable decision-making center. This is the time in life when you stop following someone else's script and begin writing your own. Let's say the Sun is strong in someone's chart, say in Leo or the 10th house. You'll often see a person who steps into leadership early or feels a strong urge to express themselves with clarity and authority. They tend to hit this adulthood phase of life not just biologically, but existentially. They want to build a legacy, make an impact, take responsibility for who they are becoming. But what if the Sun is weak or challenged, say in Libra or the 6th house? This might delay or complicate the symbolic adulthood phase. The person may take longer to find their confidence or sense of inner authority. They may go through career confusion, self-esteem issues, or struggle with father-related karma. Yet even then, the Sun is teaching them, through trials, how to become their own source of light. This life stage symbolism also connects deeply with the father principle. The Sun represents the father not just biologically, but symbolically, that guiding force which pushes you to rise, stand, and grow. For some, that father energy is empowering. For others, it's absent, oppressive, or distorted. But either way, the Sun asks the same question: can you lead yourself? In the symbolic framework, this is also the stage where Dharma becomes a living concept. We stop merely surviving and start asking what we're meant to do. Career, leadership, clarity of direction, these are all Sun-driven themes. And when we live out of alignment with our Sun, adulthood can feel like a fog, functional but uninspired. So when you're reading a chart and trying to understand where someone is in life, whether they're 18 or 58, ask, has their inner Sun awakened? Have they stepped into symbolic adulthood? Are they leading from within or still chasing the light of others? Because in the end, the Sun doesn't just symbolize adulthood, it represents the part of us that keeps evolving into it every day. Next in this series, the Moon, and how it captures the life stage of childhood, emotional bonding, and the early formation of identity through care, comfort, and vulnerability. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 2, the Moon. In this second part of our series on planetary life stage symbolism, we turn to the Moon, soft, reflective, ever-changing. If the Sun symbolizes adulthood and conscious identity, the Moon represents childhood, the emotional and psychological foundation of life where everything begins. The Moon governs our mind, manas, emotions, habits, memories, and how we seek comfort and security. And symbolically, it aligns with the earliest phase of life, infancy and childhood, when we are most dependent on others, especially the mother or primary caregiver. It is in this tender stage that our emotional wiring is shaped, and that is exactly what the Moon governs in the chart. How we feel, how we react, and what we need to feel safe. In childhood, we aren't acting from ego or strategy. We're responding emotionally, soaking in the atmosphere around us like a sponge. The Moon reflects that deeply impressionable state. Its waxing and waning nature mirrors the child's fluctuating moods, intense needs for connection, and capacity for bonding. This is why the Moon is called Chandra, the one who nourishes. Let's say the Moon is placed in the 4th house, its natural home. This often indicates a person who had a nurturing emotional foundation or at least one where the mother's role was central. Their childhood may have been deeply emotional, and they carry those early experiences into adult life as emotional intelligence or sensitivity. But if the moon is in the 8th or 12th house, or afflicted, it can symbolize early emotional instability, separation from the mother, or suppressed feelings. The person may grow up still carrying unmet emotional needs from that formative period. Symbolically, the moon's life stage also includes dependency, vulnerability, and adaptability. In this phase, we don't make decisions. Decisions are made for us. That's why the moon also rules the subconscious mind. It reflects patterns we didn't consciously choose but absorbed, like family conditioning, cultural scripts, and emotional coping mechanisms. This is also why in Vedic astrology, the moon is critical for judging mental health, nurturing ability, and emotional maturity. A strong moon allows a person to be stable, nurturing, and calm, even in adulthood. A weak moon can create mood swings, dependency issues, or anxiety rooted in early life. In symbolic terms, someone might be 35 years old, but still emotionally in a moon phase, still seeking mothering, struggling with inner insecurity, or reacting rather than reflecting. And someone else might have outgrown this stage early, becoming emotionally self-reliant even as a teenager, especially if the moon is aspected by Saturn or placed in a kendra with support. The moon also governs memory, and in this symbolic childhood phase, that includes emotional memory. Often, our adult reactions come not from the present moment, but from unprocessed childhood imprints. That's why understanding the moon in the chart is key to understanding the inner child and how that child still speaks inside us. So when you read a chart or reflect on your own, ask, how did I learn to feel? Where did I learn to seek safety? What do I still carry from my early life? Because the moon holds the blueprint of how you felt before you even knew who you were. Next in the series, Mars, and how it rules the symbolic phase of youth, where instinct, action, conflict, and courage begin to shape the emerging warrior within. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 3, Mars. In this third part of our series, we come to Mars, fiery, bold, and raw. If the moon governs childhood and the sun represents adulthood, Mars symbolizes youth, specifically the energetic, action-driven, and often rebellious stage where we start asserting ourselves, sometimes clumsily, often passionately. Mars is the planet of courage, competition, ambition, aggression, and instinctual action. And symbolically, it aligns with the life phase, where the individual breaks out of emotional dependence and starts testing boundaries, usually the teenage to early adulthood years. This is the time when we begin saying, I want, I can, or sometimes, I won't. Think about what youth looks like. There's urgency, physical vitality, experimentation, and a thirst to do something, even if the consequences are unclear. That's Mars. It acts before it reflects. It's the will to fight, to explore, to take risks. Not from confidence like the sun or analysis like Mercury, but from raw instinct. And that makes Mars a symbol of the warrior phase of life. Let's say Mars is in the 3rd house, the house of initiative and personal effort. The person may have been bold from early on, competitive with siblings, and drawn to sports or arguments. But the deeper symbolism is this: they are being trained to use their personal willpower wisely. Youth is when this training happens, learning to act without recklessness, to assert without aggression. Now consider Mars in the 6th house, where it becomes a fighter in the trenches. Early life may be filled with struggle, but it builds resilience. The person learns to survive, to face enemies, to heal through movement or discipline. It's the phase where one turns pain into power. If Mars is debilitated, say in Cancer, the early years might bring passive aggression or a fear of confrontation. But this too is part of the symbolic youth phase, learning to own anger, to direct energy constructively, to stand one's ground emotionally rather than exploding or withdrawing. Mars in Aries or Scorpio, its own signs, brings early and intense activation of this phase. These individuals often feel ready to go to war from a young age, not literally, but in how they pursue goals, fight for independence, or resist authority. But the lesson remains the same. Youth is not just about strength, it's about learning what to fight for. Symbolically, this stage is also when one encounters the first major tests of ego, sexuality, survival instincts, and autonomy. Mars rules blood, muscles, heat, the physical power of youth. But without wisdom, this power burns out. With it, it becomes the fuel for destiny. So when looking at Mars in a chart, ask, how did this person learn to assert themselves? Were they encouraged to fight for what matters, or told to suppress their fire? Is their youthful Mars still dominant in adult life, causing conflict, or has it matured into disciplined willpower? Mars symbolizes the phase of life where we move from vulnerability to agency. It's that stage when we stop asking for permission and start carving our path. And even though it matures at 28, its symbolic influence shapes the teenage and early adult years. Those crucial years when we learn that the world doesn't just give you what you want, you have to claim it. Next up in this journey, Mercury, and the symbolic stage of youth, where learning, adaptability, speech, and intellect take the center stage, crafting the mind that will shape our communication with the world. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations Part 4, Mercury. In this next phase of our planetary life stage journey, we meet Mercury, the planet of the intellect, language, logic, curiosity, and adaptability. While Mars represents the raw, physical drive of youth, Mercury symbolizes the formative years of adolescence and early education when we begin learning how to think, speak, reason, and interact with the world intellectually. Symbolically, Mercury rules the student phase of life, the stage where we're absorbing language, observing patterns, forming opinions, and testing ideas. It reflects that time when a child begins asking why and how, moving from emotional instinct, moon, and physical action, Mars, to mental exploration. Mercury's energy is fast, agile, and neutral, just like the youthful mind it symbolizes. It doesn't judge, it compares. It doesn't cling, it experiments. In the symbolic life journey, this is the stage where communication becomes currency. In school, in peer groups, in sibling dynamics, and later in the world of work and learning. Let's say Mercury is in the third house, the house of skills, communication, and self-effort. This placement often shows someone with strong verbal abilities or quick mental reflexes, especially in childhood. They might have been the talker, the witty one, the debater in class. But the deeper symbolism is about the mind learning to negotiate reality through words and thought, not just through emotion or instinct. Now imagine Mercury in the 8th house, a more hidden, introspective placement. In the adolescent phase, this may create a person who observes deeply but speaks little. Their curiosity turns inward into psychology, mystery, or hidden truths. They might not have been the most vocal student, but their inner world was rich and analytical. This too is Mercury's domain, the crafting of insight. If Mercury is in Pisces, its debilitation sign, early life might bring difficulty in organizing thoughts or focusing linearly. But this Mercury learns through story, feeling, imagination, often becoming poetic or spiritually expressive once matured. Even in its challenge, Mercury here still represents a different mode of learning. In symbolic terms, Mercury governs the life stage when we're learning not just facts, but how to relate through the mind. It's the stage of forming friendships through shared ideas, beginning to reason morally, and shaping identity through intellectual feedback. Think of the adolescent who suddenly develops a sense of humor, gets into journaling, or becomes obsessed with chess, coding, or manga. That's Mercury waking up. This is also the phase where we start developing our inner narrative, the voice in our head that tells us who we are. If Mercury is afflicted or under pressure, that voice can become anxious, critical, or scattered. If well placed, it becomes a source of clarity, flexibility, and wit. When reading a chart, Mercury can show how someone experienced this formative life stage. Did they feel mentally free or stifled? Were they encouraged to question and communicate, or shut down? Mercury's symbolic life stage reminds us that growth isn't just about doing, it's about understanding. It's the period when thought becomes power, and language becomes the bridge between the inner world and the outer one. Next in this series, Jupiter, the wise teacher, and how it symbolizes the phase of moral and philosophical awakening when we begin searching for purpose, mentors, and deeper truths that guide our long-term journey. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 5, Jupiter. In this 5th part of our series, we arrive at Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, ethics, growth, mentorship, and belief systems. While Mercury symbolizes the early learning phase of adolescence, Jupiter represents the life stage of emerging adulthood, where we begin forming not just thoughts, but principles. This is the phase where knowledge becomes wisdom. Symbolically, Jupiter governs the transition from youthful curiosity to philosophical maturity. It's the stage where we start asking the bigger questions. What is the meaning of all this? What do I believe in? What is my dharma, my path? This is often associated with one's early 20s, a time when we seek guidance, higher education, spiritual frameworks, and long-term vision. Jupiter rules teachers, mentors, guides, gurus, and the role they play in shaping us during this period cannot be overstated. When we look to someone for inspiration, a professor, a spiritual leader, even a wise friend, it is Jupiter at work. It's no longer about just acquiring skills or passing exams, that's Mercury. It's about developing a worldview. Let's say Jupiter is in the 9th house, its natural domain of higher learning and dharma. The person may naturally be drawn to philosophy, religion, law, or moral leadership from early adulthood. They're often seen as optimistic, generous, and wise beyond their years. But more than that, their life path is guided by a search for meaning, not just success. Now imagine Jupiter in the 6th house, a house of challenges and service. In that case, the early adult years may involve learning through struggle, but that struggle becomes the catalyst for true spiritual or ethical understanding. Jupiter there might produce someone who teaches others not by preaching, but by example, through resilience, compassion, and humility. In Pisces or Sagittarius, Jupiter thrives, offering expansive thinking, spiritual insight, and faith in life's goodness. In Capricorn, where it's debilitated, early adulthood may feel constricted, overly practical, or skeptical. But even here, Jupiter teaches. The person learns to build wisdom through real-world responsibility and faith through grounded experience. Jupiter's symbolic life stage also aligns with marriage, children, career choices, and spiritual initiation, the big decisions that begin shaping a legacy. This is the stage where people often meet a life mentor, find their spiritual path, or experience a turning point that awakens long-term vision. Emotionally, this is when hope becomes a conscious force. Jupiter gives us the inner compass to navigate uncertainty. Where Mercury is the clever student, Jupiter is the teacher. Not because it knows everything, but because it sees life as a school of growth. So when you look at someone's Jupiter in their chart, ask, what shaped their beliefs in early adulthood? Did they receive guidance or have to become their own guide? What kind of mentor are they becoming for others? Jupiter represents the symbolic age when our choices begin reflecting not just what we want, but what we believe in. It's when we step into roles of trust, teaching, giving, and guiding, with the understanding that life has more to offer than just outcomes. It has purpose. Next in this series, Venus, and the romantic, aesthetic, and relational stage of life, where love, desire, and beauty become central to how we experience ourselves and others. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 6, Venus. Now we enter one of the most emotionally charged and socially vibrant stages of life, the domain of Venus, the planet of love, beauty, pleasure, relationships, sensuality, and refinement. In the symbolic journey of human development, Venus represents late adolescence to early adulthood, the stage where connection, attraction, and emotional reciprocity come into focus. This is the life phase where we become aware of desire, both the desire to be loved and the desire to express affection, beauty, or intimacy. It's not just about romantic relationships, though Venus rules those strongly. It's about discovering how we relate to people, to art, to comfort, and to our own sense of worth. Think of this stage as the time when one begins forming intimate bonds, exploring sexuality, understanding aesthetics, and developing emotional taste. Venus teaches us what we are drawn to and what draws others to us. This is also the phase when style, charm, social graces, and even the ability to attract abundance come alive. Let's say Venus is in the 7th house, the natural house of partnerships. This often points to someone who seeks connection early in life and learns much of their self-worth through one-on-one relationships. Before maturity, these might be intense, idealistic, or even codependent. But symbolically, Venus marks the beginning of emotional refinement, learning the difference between lust and love, infatuation and intimacy. Now consider Venus in the 5th house, the house of creativity, romance, and expression, The person might have been the artist, the charmer, or the romantic dreamer in their early 20s. They are learning through love and art how to connect the heart with beauty and how to share it. Venus in Virgo, its debilitation sign, may reflect an early life struggle with receiving love or feeling enough to be loved. But that journey is part of the symbolic lesson, to recognize one's value not through perfection, but through presence. And after maturity, Venus here can become deeply devoted, sincere, and sensitive in love. Venus in Taurus or Libra, its own signs, brings early alignment with charm, aesthetic pleasure, or balanced relating. But even here, the deeper Venusian journey unfolds in this symbolic phase of life. How do I merge with another without losing myself? How do I receive as much as I give? This Venus stage also aligns with exploring creative talents, personal style, and emotional sensuality. Whether through art, music, beauty rituals, or affection, the Venus phase teaches us about the quality of experience, not just the structure of it. It's also during this stage that we often form our most memorable romantic relationships, develop a taste for luxury or comfort, and confront questions of emotional self-worth. Venus asks, do I believe I'm worthy of love, softness, and beauty? So, when you're reading a chart, Venus shows how someone navigates this phase. Are they afraid of intimacy? Are they seeking validation through relationships? Do they feel beautiful, inside and out? Venus, in symbolic terms, governs the moment we stop merely learning and start relating, where life becomes not just about purpose or intellect, but about pleasure, connection, and emotional resonance. Up next in this series, Saturn, and how it represents the symbolic stage of responsibility, time, and karma, the life phase where endurance, maturity, and long-term commitment begin to shape the soul. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 7, Saturn. Now we come to Saturn, the slow-moving, deeply karmic planet that governs discipline, responsibility, structure, endurance, and life's hardest-earned wisdom. In the symbolic life stage model, Saturn represents the mature adult or elder stage, often aligned with midlife onward, when one begins to fully shoulder the weight of karma and long-term duty. This is not the stage of exploration, experimentation, or charm. Saturn's life phase is about commitment, boundaries, accountability, and the realization that life isn't just about potential. It's about what we actually build and sustain. It's when we begin asking not, what can I get from life, but what am I responsible for? What do I owe to others, to society, and to myself? Let's say Saturn is in the 10th house, the house of career and public responsibility. This is someone whose karmic path involves building a legacy through work, often through hardship, delay, or pressure. In their symbolic Saturn phase, typically the 30s through 50s and beyond, their dharma ripens. They rise through perseverance, not privilege. Now imagine Saturn in the 4th house, related to emotional foundations and family. This might point to emotional burdens, early caregiving roles, or karmic ties to one's lineage. In the Saturn phase, this person is learning to become the emotional rock they never had, perhaps raising a family, caring for aging parents, or finally claiming inner emotional stability after decades of internal work. Saturn in Capricorn or Aquarius, its own signs, often suggest someone who feels old early. They may take on responsibility before their peers. But still, the symbolic life stage of Saturn doesn't fully express until they're in a position to shape systems, bear consequences, or offer guidance. In Cancer or Leo, signs of emotional expression and individuality, Saturn brings tests. How do you stay grounded while nurturing others? How do you hold power with humility? This life stage also often aligns with the Saturn return periods, around age 29 to 30, and again around 58-60, which mark transitions into deeper maturity. But beyond astrological timing, Saturn symbolically represents a shift into a more sobering, structured view of life. Emotionally, Saturn's stage teaches patience, delayed gratification, solitude, and resilience. While the earlier phases are filled with passion, dreams, and discovery, Saturn brings you face-to-face with reality. And that's not a punishment, it's a rite of passage. Through Saturn, we learn that enduring love, meaningful work, and spiritual depth all require time and structure. And in this symbolic stage, people often become mentors, system builders, and tradition bearers. They are no longer seekers, they become stabilizers. Their worth is not measured by charisma or speed, but by the quality of what they've built. So when analyzing a chart, Saturn's placement can tell you, where will this person be tested? Where must they become the adult? Where are they asked to endure and grow with time, not despite it? Saturn's symbolic stage is about legacy. It's the part of life where wisdom is earned, not given. And for many, it's the time when their true impact begins to take form, quiet, lasting, and karmically aligned. Next in the series, Rahu, the planet of obsession, ambition, and worldly illusion, and how it marks the symbolic phase of disruption, craving, and reinvention that defines many midlife journeys. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 8, Rahu. Now we step into the most unpredictable and karmically charged phase of life, the domain of Rahu, the north node of the moon. Rahu isn't a planet in the traditional sense, but a shadow Graha, representing illusion, obsession, worldly ambition, and radical change. In terms of symbolic life stages, Rahu governs the phase of midlife disruption and transformation, the period when one steps outside the familiar and begins confronting the unfulfilled, the unorthodox, and the uncontrollable. Rahu's symbolic stage aligns with that moment in life, often around the 40s, when the structures we've built, career, marriage, social identity, begin to feel confining or hollow. We might ask, is this really what I wanted? What if there's more? This is Rahu's call, the pull toward reinvention, taboo breaking, risk-taking, and stepping into unfamiliar territories. Unlike Saturn, which wants order and tradition, Rahu thrives in disruption. It symbolizes the stage where we begin chasing desires that were repressed or overlooked earlier in life. This could be a career pivot, an unconventional relationship, or a dramatic lifestyle change, not always rational, but deeply karmic. Let's say Rahu is in the 10th house, the house of public life and career. During its symbolic stage, the person might suddenly want fame, status, or to break into an unconventional profession. This isn't superficial ambition, it's the soul's attempt to engage with something karmically unfinished. Rahu says, "You've played safe long enough, now leap." Now imagine Rahu in the first house, the house of identity. The person may reinvent themselves completely during midlife. New appearance, new name, new philosophy. The symbolic Rahu phase here is about breaking free from inherited identity scripts and claiming something radical and self-defined. Rahu in Taurus may crave financial power, in Gemini, intellectual notoriety, in Scorpio, hidden knowledge or spiritual power, in Aquarius, rebellion or visionary innovation. In every case, Rahu brings a hunger that feels urgent, irrational, and unstoppable until it's integrated with awareness. The challenge in this life phase is that Rahu operates through illusion, Maya. The person may chase external validation, think they're missing out, or sabotage what's stable, all in the pursuit of a desire they can't name. But this, too, is part of Rahu's initiation. Its chaos is meant to deconstruct ego-based identity and push us toward a more evolved self. Emotionally, Rahu's symbolic stage confronts us with envy, obsession, fear of missing out, and compulsive behavior, but also with breakthroughs, risk, and karmic acceleration. If we cling too tightly to Saturn's world of control, Rahu's arrival can feel like a storm. But if we lean in with awareness, it becomes a gateway to personal evolution. So when reading a chart, look at Rahu to ask, what does this person obsess over? Where might they experience dramatic transformation or a karmic craving that won't be ignored? In symbolic terms, Rahu's stage is not about settling, it's about searching. It's the part of life where the soul stretches beyond borders, breaks old rules, and confronts shadow desires. And while Rahu may confuse, it also catalyzes, awakening a version of you that could not be accessed through comfort alone. Next in the series, Ketu, the final life stage archetype, representing release, surrender, and spiritual liberation, the inner work of detachment that often unfolds in the second half of life. Planetary Symbolic Life Stage Associations, Part 9, Ketu. We now reach the final stage in the symbolic life journey, the domain of Ketu, the south node of the moon. If Rahu is the seeker of experience, novelty, and worldly entanglement, then Ketu is the renouncer, the Graha of detachment, introspection, past life mastery, and spiritual dissolution. Symbolically, Ketu governs the final life stage, often unfolding after midlife. Around the 50s and beyond, when the soul turns inward, seeking meaning not through acquisition, but through release. Ketu's life stage is not necessarily tied to age, but to a shift in orientation. It's when a person begins letting go of identity, status, and control, and starts exploring what lies beyond ego. In the Ketu stage, we no longer ask, what can I achieve? But rather, what am I ready to surrender? It's the phase of simplification, spiritual inquiry, and karmic resolution. Let's say Ketu is in the 12th house, the house of moksha, isolation, and cosmic retreat. This placement often aligns with someone who, later in life, seeks solitude, meditation, and transcendence. They may detach from social life, corporate ambitions, or worldly pleasures, not out of bitterness, but from a sense of completion. They've played the game, now they want to merge with something greater. Now consider Ketu in the 4th house, the house of home, mother, and emotional roots. In early life, this may create a sense of disconnection or emotional complexity. But in the symbolic Ketu phase, this placement invites emotional closure, a healing of ancestral karma, and the ability to live peacefully with one's inner world. Ketu in Pisces or Scorpio often leads to deep mystical inquiry in later years. In Leo or Aries, the person may detach from ego-driven self-expression, stepping away from the spotlight. Wherever Ketu is placed, that's the area where we ultimately seek freedom, not fulfillment. Emotionally, this phase can feel quiet, sometimes lonely, but often deeply liberating. Ketu doesn't operate through desire. It removes desire. People in this symbolic life stage may downsize their homes, withdraw from social media, spend more time in nature, or pursue spiritual studies with a quiet intensity. There's often a sense of, I've done enough, now I just want peace. Ketu is also associated with karma from past lives, the residue we've brought into this incarnation that no longer needs to be pursued, only resolved. In this way, its life stage symbolism is not about striving, but about integration. It's the inner ripening of the soul. In counseling or chart reading, when someone is in their Ketu phase, whether through age, transits, or spiritual maturity, the guidance must shift. It's not about motivating or strategizing. It's about holding space for stillness, simplicity, and truth that doesn't need to be spoken. So when you look at Ketu in a chart, ask, what is this person being invited to let go of? What part of their life no longer serves their evolution? Symbolically, Ketu's life stage is the return to the source. It is not the end. It is the inward flowering, the moment when identity dissolves and only essence remains. After all the noise of Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Rahu, Ketu is the silence that follows. And within that silence, the soul finds its real home. This concludes the series on planetary symbolic life stage associations, a full journey from the moon's tender beginnings to the timeless detachment of Ketu. A journey not just through astrology, but through life itself.